You're listening to Music Tectonics.
Welcome back to Music Tectonics, where we go beneath the surface of music and tech. I'm your host, Dmitri Vietze, and I'm also the CEO and founder of Rock, Paper, Scissors, a PR firm that specializes in music and technology. And I'm super pumped because it seems like this time of year, every year, I get to talk to this guy. When I first talked to him back in May of 2019, he was the CEO of Dubset. And actually, last year, I spoke with Evan Lowenstein, the founder of Stageit, at this exact time. And this year, I get to bring Stephen White back, who is now the CEO of Stageit. Stephen, it's great to be with you again. How you doing?
Hey, Dmitri, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, and I love talking to you because you have a extensive music technology background. You were president at Grace Note, and we've talked about some of your previous positions. And, you know, we ran into each other at music industry conferences, and so we've been following a lot of the same trends, even though our career paths are very different. And
Yeah,
so
we met long ago in an airport in Frankfurt, I believe, on our way to meet him.
Yes, and I think it was my pants and your shirt, crazy shirts, that brought us together.
That's the truth. That's the truth.
Awesome.
Well, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Great to have you. So let's just dive in. For anyone who doesn't fully know what Stageit is, how do you describe it?
Stageit is a ticketed live streaming platform. All events on the platform are paid. There are no free shows. And it's really a stage for performers who want to perform to audiences virtually, wherever they may be across the globe.
Right. Cool. And so, as I said, we spoke with Evan, the founder, at the beginning of the pandemic back in April of 2020, when he was hit with a tidal wave of renewed interest. And it was so fun to get him on. We did a bunch of podcasts specifically around some of the things that were popping up during the pandemic. And live streaming was one we leaned into heavily. But it was literally like weeks. It was weeks into this. And you could just hear it in his voice. He had said, hey, we basically pulled the oars in. We tried lots of different stuff, and some things stuck and some things didn't, but you could hear he was like, and now all of a sudden there's like a tidal wave of interest behind us and things are changing. So there was lots of renewed interest. So I want to ask you quickly, just to kind of connect the dots for anyone that's been listening through the entire pandemic to now, where we're finally starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel, some of the things that he talked about. I know, for example, one thing that was kind of interesting and different about Stageit, especially because it was started so much earlier than a lot of the platforms that came in, you had something called notes, which were these 10-cent currency notes, which was the method for ticketing and tipping. Is that still the method that you guys use?
Yeah, and just, maybe just a quick nod to Evan. Stageit really was an amazing idea just way before its time. And like a lot of, innovative entrepreneurs, Evan, was right. He was just right early, right? And as we all know that there's a combination of timing, luck, et cetera, that leads to success. But to his credit, they were very thoughtful about the platform that they built originally, and he kept it going, through these multiple years between 2015 and 2020, when there was limited interest. People were using the platform, but it really hadn't taken off, like it has since the pandemic. And who knew that it was going to be a global pandemic that would pour gasoline on the business, model? But that is exactly what happened. So there's a couple of things in terms of kind of features and functions that Evan was very thoughtful about, being an artist himself. And the first was notes. And the reason we use notes as a virtual currency is to abstract away the idea of dollars and cents. Many artists are not comfortable talking to fans about money. It's this kind of uncomfortable tension that comes up. And you see this anytime you see artists kind of busking on Facebook or Instagram, where they're, throwing up their Venmo links or throwing up their Cash App links, and they kind of awkwardly between songs, they're like, hey guys, if you want to tip me, you write down there. And it's always this weird, awkward thing. By abstracting that away and creating this virtual currency inside of Stageit, it's a lot like poker chips in Vegas. Everybody's just playing with this, virtual money. And at the end of the day, it's dollars and cents beneath it, but it makes it much more comfortable for both artists and
In some
fans.
ways, it's kind of prescient in terms of the relationship with cryptocurrency and NFTs, like creating this other NFT. It basically, I mean, it's not on the blockchain, obviously, but it's not fungible.
Yeah, that's right, and it could in the future. No guarantees, but it could be on
Yeah.
the blockchain. And so there's quite a bit here that just fits into kind of the evolution of how we think about currency
Yeah.
and work.
And so just to be clear, again, to get to some of those like early thought around how you build a live streaming product before this became like a Zoom everyday world situation, you guys allow artists to sell tickets or receive tips, right? That's still accurate?
It's both. So every show is ticketed. There are no free shows. Every show has to have a ticket associated with it. We do have what's called a pay what you can feature. A lot of artists do use that. You can set a minimum, set a suggested price, and then allow people to pay what they want to pay. In those instances, most people pay what you've requested them to pay, but sometimes people pay less, sometimes people pay more. It typically averages out at what the artist has requested. But it's a nice way to give a nod to the fact that people are hurting during the pandemic. People are out of work. It's tough times for folks. And, in general, entertainment can get expensive. We've got multiple subscriptions. We've got all these things that we do these days. And I think Evan really wanted early on to make it easy for folks to get into these shows, knowing that once you're there, you will tip. And the tipping behavior on the site is a huge part of what makes Stageit special. And I know we're going to talk more about that. But yes, tickets and tipping today are the two methods that artists or performers have to earn and generate revenue.
And it does lead to a certain philosophy. Putting those features in kind of point to a certain philosophy about the value of music, which has only become even more of an important topic as shifts have happened in how music is getting consumed digitally, whether it's live performance or recorded, whatever. I even remember Evan talking about something called hitchhiking, where fans would buy somebody else tickets, but it's still saying, look, there is a dollar value associated with what somebody is doing. He mentioned top tipper awards. Is that still something that plays out?
Yeah. So the tipping, as I mentioned, the tipping piece is a huge part of the platform, and it's gamified within the platform, meaning that every performer has the opportunity to create sets of rewards for the top tippers. And then during the show, as people are tipping, there's a leaderboard, and you can see, where you are in your ranking as it relates to other tippers. You don't know how much other folks have tipped, but you know what your ranking is. And the way the rewards typically work is like the top tipper gets X, the second tipper gets Y. And those rewards can be pretty amazing things. I mean, Yellow Wolf gave away appearances in his next 5 music videos. DJ Williams gave away a signed custom guitar, as did Brett Williams from Poison. We've had lots of artists do some pretty incredible things. Blue October gave away a individual concert to the top tipper, or a 30-minute, one-on-one concert. And the tipping behaviors because of that are pretty significant. Tipping ends up being 40 to 50% of the revenue that's generated for these shows, and it's a pretty significant uplift from what these folks would receive on any of the other platforms. You're playing on any of the other streaming platforms that don't support this, you're getting 40 to 50% less revenue because you don't have that capability to generate this additional 40 to 50%. So it's really, really important part of what we do. Artists love it. Fans love it. It's really a cool, and as you start to think about how you introduce virtual merchandise and other things into the mix, it again is somewhat prescient in that these are all things now that we can build around in terms of that kind of behavioral capability on the platform to incite people to tip. And then hitchhiking, you mentioned, hitchhiking is, again, a really cool part of the platform. If you don't have the ability to buy a ticket, even pay what you can, or for some of the shows that can get more expensive, some of the shows can be 30, 40, $50 a ticket. Folks can hitchhike. and the purchasing of tickets for others. So if you buy a hitchhiker a ticket, that goes towards the rewards. And so it's equivalent to tipping. So it's a really feel good way for fans to bring other fans into shows and to also then be, eligible for these rewards. So it's a great part of this thing. And I think behind it all is the idea that a performer's time is worth something. And it is monetized, and it's not, we don't believe that performers should be performing for free. The idea that, you're doing it for fame, you're doing it for the exposure, like that's the way that the incumbent players have used to get performers to do things for free for years and years and years, and it's time for it to stop.
That must feel great for you to be working at a company that has that at the core.
It really does. Everything here is artist first, performer first. We believe really strongly that our job, our role is to facilitate this, pairing of artists and fans in a way that enables an artist to continue to practice their craft. If these folks aren't making money creating art, they won't create art anymore. So it's really, really important that we find ways to help artists monetize their creativity and to do so in ways that brings real value to fans. And if you do that, and if you're really creating and providing value to the fans will bend over backwards for you, and they'll shower you with dollars. And we see this happening kind of time and time again. And there's really cool kind of cool monetization behaviors that have evolved around some of these artists. Like there's one artist on the platform, Paul Corella. He's a Scottish guy. He was I think he was in the Scottish Air Force, if I'm not mistaken. But he was a captain, and his fans call him, captain. And so, in the middle of his set, there's always someone they'll throw a coin for your captain, and everybody in the show will start throwing, one note coins. So it's this equivalent of 10 cents. It's kind of throwing dimes, but it just showers, for the entirety of the song. Like those kind of behaviors are very, very cool. The fans get really into it. It really makes the artists feel good. And that's what this is all about is, in addition to giving you access to these artists it's creating that community around the fan to artist interactions.
All right. This is awesome, Stephen. We've kind of gotten caught up from sort of that earlier interview that we did with Stageit. And I want to take a quick break for an announcement. But when we come back, I want to ask you about what engagement has been like since the pandemic. So we'll be right back. All right, cool. We'll be right back. The annual Music Tectonics Conference is known for bringing together people from across the music tech landscape to share ideas and get business done. In 2021, our unique conference approach invites a global audience to participate in parallel universes, in the metaverse, across the planet, and on a carousel by the sea. Mark your calendar for online events October 25th through October 27th and in-person events outdoors by the sea in Los Angeles on November 2nd. We're maximizing what virtual events do best with two unique platforms. In the morning, we'll bring together dynamic and interactive panels of thought leaders plus our world-famous speed networking so you can share ideas and build relationships frictionlessly across time zones. In the afternoon, we'll add even more serendipity as we invite you to the metaverse. Join us for that feeling of togetherness as you move your avatar through the crowd at a musical instrument demo, drop into the virtual expo hall, or strike up a chance conversation. Don't just talk about innovation in music, experience it at a conference like no other, Music Tectonics. Learn more and get a special early bird ticket price starting June 1st at musictectonics.com. All right, Stephen, we are back. Like I said, I wanted to ask you about what's been happening since the last time we had Stageit on the podcast, which is basically almost the entirety of the pandemic. Can you share with us some stats about use and engagement since the pandemic started?
Yeah, it's been really incredible. Stageit in 2020 hosted 6,200, a little over 6,200 shows. To give you a sense, that's about 12% of the paid live streaming market.
Nice.
So it's a very significant percentage in terms of number of shows. And that's really, what we're about. We're the only open platform, meaning, any artist can come sign up and perform. There's no gate in front of you. You don't have to be approved by Stageit to perform. And that's kind of, core at our ethos is, a stage for every performer and a front row seat for every fan. And so that the number of performances has been amazing. And what we've seen is kind of the average spend per user continue to tick up. It's about $17 per user at this point,
Wow.
which is a really healthy number. Fans come back time and time again. We have a very loyal fan base. There's about 900,000 users on the platform right now, fans. They attend an average of 2 shows a month when they're active. So if they're attending shows, not everyone attends shows all the time, but when they're attending shows, they tend to come back, two shows a month. And so it's been really, really fantastic. The time that people spend in these shows has increased. The average show for us is 60 minutes. People spend an average of 55 minutes per show. So they're staying for the whole thing, which is great, which is very different from other platforms. If you look at engagement on Twitch, you look at engagement on Instagram, YouTube, people kind of drop in and drop out. And what we really are proud of on Stageit is you're creating this intimate experience and people want to be there because you're sitting right in the front row seat with this, this artist that you care about. So it's pretty incredible.
Well, and there's probably a sign that, ticketed events keep people's attention too. They've already committed. They've paid, even if it's 10 cents, they've paid to be there.
Yeah, that's right. But I think what you do find, depending on the performer and some of the other platforms, I think have, much shorter average, session times. And then just a couple other stats for you. We're delivering content to 135 countries now. We have had a very significant focus on international expansion. We have quite a bit of consumption that happens in Europe. Very, very popular with Irish artists. We have kind of the who's who of the Irish artists on the platform, which is great. We also have launched into Africa this year, first ticketed live streaming platform that's live in Africa. That's been amazing with a lot of shows in Nigeria and South Africa, just amazing, music cultures there. And we've been really pleased to bring some amazing content online with our partner. We have a dedicated partner there called Stageit Africa.
Oh, very cool. Wow. That's one of the things we've seen with the Music Tectonics Conference as we had to shift online was the global presence has just transformed what's the community, like who is joining the conversation or the concert or the event and so forth. And that kind of leads to my next question, which almost has an answer built into it. But do you see signs that Stageit was filling a live performance gap in this interim of touring being shut down? Or is there a long-term change that's happening here?
I mean, I've said this pretty broadly, and I'll say it again. The future is hybrid. There is no chance that fans who have now experienced, at scale, live streaming will go back to a world where they don't use live streaming. The analogy I like to use is sports. When sports first started to be put on TV, everyone freaked out. They're like, well, no one's going to go to the games anymore. And it's a really failed kind of, argument. The live event is a special and unique thing in and of itself, and nothing is ever going to replace that. Those of us that love going to live music shows will always go to live music shows, because we love that experience of being in the room, being there with the musicians, being there with the other fans. But the convenience of live streaming, much like broadcast, to sports, there are times where I want to still see a show. I want to watch a show at Red Rocks in Colorado, and I'm not flying to Colorado to go see the show. I'm going to sit here in my living room in San Francisco, put it up on my 70-inch TV, put it on my beautiful sound system, and watch a great show. And now that has become adopted broadly, it's not going backwards. 90% of consumers say they will continue to consume live streams after live music returns.
I mean, it makes sense when you put the sports analogy there, because that's been going on for years and years and years. People are fanatical about their teams and they want to see the competition in real time, but they don't necessarily always have the budget to attend or fly someplace and so forth. So that makes a ton of sense. What's different is that right now, mostly people are purely doing live streaming, which means they are live streaming from home or from wherever, backstage, whatever it is right now. In the model that you're talking about that will emerge, they will just be on tour and they'll be reaching an additional audience. Is that right?
Yes and no. I think what we are going to see, especially with acts that aren't kind of the huge acts like the Beyoncés of the world, is you'll see a reduced amount of touring. Many of the artists who are performing on Stageit are making more than they ever made touring. And doing that from the comfort of their home studios or wherever it is they're performing from, and the ability to then see their families and not have to travel. It's just, we're looking at the broader impact of this from a mental health perspective. It's really a grueling thing to be on the road for 200 days out of the year, and to be touring that much. It's very difficult to be separated from your friends and your family for that long. And we see that, take its toll across, artists all across the industry. And there's any number of stories of folks who have succumbed to that pressure, right? And we have a renewed focus on mental health in the music industry, which I think is fantastic. We believe very strongly that we can reduce the amount of touring that folks have to do. You don't have to do, 120 stops anymore. You can do 50 stops, and then augment that with X number of live streams and still, likely make more money than you did doing those 120 stops. So it's going to evolve a little bit. There's also big environmental impact. You get less planes, less trains, less automobiles, all that kind of stuff. So it's really, there's a lot of positives to it. And, honestly, some of these shows, if you talk to some of the artists, they're like, yeah, the annual, trek we used to make to, I don't want to pick on any geographic location, random spot, upstate, we maybe don't have to do that stop anymore, right? And usually there was only X number of fans that we never sold those shows out. And, those are the kind of things that okay, let's bring those folks into a live stream and find a way to give them probably a better experience in some ways by giving them a live stream and better access and better availability of the artist than they would get if they were actually there.
That makes total sense. But I guess one thing that I am curious about is you described it as being similar to sports in one sense, because there's kind of demand for people to go to events that they wouldn't necessarily go to. But then you said the hybrid model that you're looking at would be it really would be a hybrid combination of events on stage, which may or may not be live streamed, but also live streamed events that are independent of any kind of stage tour and that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that is a significant difference. And listen, I have my own thoughts on where this goes, but none of us have a crystal ball. But I think what we're seeing is artists realize the freedom that this gives them and the kind of creative freedom, as well as the freedom to not have some of these travel constraints that have for so long, been just a part and parcel of live music. If you wanted to make money, performing live, you had to go on tour, and you had to go on tour for a long time. You had to, tour in the US and tour in Europe and tour in Asia. And, not every band gets that opportunity, obviously, but, almost every band that's kind of makes it to a certain level has to tour. And what we're finding is you don't have to, you can, and artists love being on stage for the most part. They like to have fans there. They want that rush of the fan interaction. we're working on things to bring that to the virtual events as well, right? Um, but with this advance in technology comes a change in behavior, and that change in behavior has just started. So where it goes, who knows? My feeling pretty strongly is we end up in a hybrid future.
So, what's going to differentiate Stageit in this hybrid world?
Well, I think there's a bunch of things. A lot of them are just kind of core parts of the platform and the things that we're doing to evolve what stage it is, to create that better virtual experience and to make that virtual experience as good or better than a live experience. And again, for some folks that'll never get there because they're such live music fanatics, but for the average consumer, making it so they don't have to pay for parking and get a babysitter and pay $14 for a drink and do all the things that come with kind of going out to a show, that brings a lot of real convenience to them. But in addition to that, it's this open accessibility, the idea that there are thousands and thousands of performances on Stageit for you to experience. The top ticket buyer on Stageit last year attended 640 shows. Just think about that. That's like 2 shows a day. And that's just, because they have the opportunity to experience, show after show after show and see new, different types of music. The global expansion piece, I think it's really, really important. The platforms that win are going to have global footprints and are going to support content from everywhere and enable folks to, experience artists, small, emerging to big and established and everything in between. And I think really evolving the fan experience, providing more ways for fans and artists to have these authentic connections is really just a core part of everything that we do. We love some of the virtual stuff. We love some of the things that are happening, with some of that, but we don't think there's any replacement for connecting, in real life here, virtually, yes, but, looking at somebody performing, seeing them actually perform, and having that experience of kind of feeling like you're sitting in their living room and watching them. It's pretty special. And there's been moments here where some of my own music, icons performing on stage, and I'm sitting there watching. I feel like I'm sitting right next to these people, and it's just absolutely amazing.
Yeah, it's interesting of just the intention of a show versus like just picking up your phone and shooting an Instagram or something like that. Where certainly in the early days of the pandemic, it felt sort of like people were just like, "Let me just do this thing," whereas it sounds like you guys are really calling for like an intentionality that's specific to that community, that platform, and the features of the platform as well.
Yeah, it's amazing to watch that evolve too. In the early days of the pandemic, people, used whatever they had and just were firing stuff up wherever they were, right? Now, a year later, you see artists that have been doing this for a while that are being very thoughtful about creating these amazing experiences, and you see their artistry, come through. It's not just the music; it's the set and the setting and the entire kind of feel of the event that they're trying to create. And that is different for every artist, and it's a big part of creating just these amazing moments.
Hey, Stephen, I saw news that Stageit launched a program with venues, and we haven't talked about that. What exactly is that?
Yeah, and we did this very early on. We are live music fans ourselves, and we felt it was really important for us to help however we could keep venues afloat during the pandemic when folks couldn't, go out to these clubs and couldn't go see shows. So we started in May of 2020 our venue program, and we started to reach out and put cameras into venues or sign venues up to just do shows and bring equipment in. Some of these historic venues, we've really focused on kind of the iconic historic venues like the Bluebird and outside of Nashville, Tennessee, Preservation Hall and DBA in New Orleans, now Snug Harbor as well. Great American Music Hall in San Francisco, Cervantes in Denver. These are iconic rooms that we really wanted to make sure didn't go away. And so we've been streaming, events from these venues all the way through the pandemic. And now that they're starting to reopen, starting to do, shows with them with limited audiences. And the whole idea being that the future is hybrid. And so, how could we enable these rooms to start live streaming and start to learn how to do this so that when they did start to bring audience and fans back into these rooms, they already were kind of vets at live streaming and already had the rig set up and already knew how to do it. And it was relatively straightforward to them. So there's a lot that goes into that. We train the existing staff, typically the sound and lighting teams on how to do this. We put all the equipment in and train everybody on how to use the equipment. We train them on how to set up the shows so that they can just be self-service and do this all themselves.
Awesome. Well, this is really interesting. I have to take another quick break for an announcement, but when I come back, Stephen, I want to ask you about what artists and managers and even promoters should do to prepare for this hybrid reality that you're seeing coming. We'll be right back. What's up, beautiful listeners? I've got a question for you. What do you want to hear next? Let me know at pages.musictectonics.com/feedback. Suggest future guests and music tech topics you want to hear us cover and tell us how we're doing. Again, that's pages.musictectonics.com/feedback. Look forward to hearing from you. All right, we're back with Stephen White from Stageit. Stephen, I want to ask you, if you are correct about this emerging hybrid model, how should artists and managers prepare? How should promoters prepare for the new reality?
Yeah, I think, if you look at what Live Nation just announced this week with 60 venues being lit up, I think I'm not alone in believing that the future is hybrid here. And I think folks are already starting to operate in this mode. And so there's a bunch of things that, artists need to think about. Do artists still want to, perform live as many times as they were before? And if not, how do you augment that with live streams? So, be thoughtful about routing and what you're doing there in terms of how you allocate your time and understanding that you now have this additional capability to perform, online. Do you need to do as many, stops as you did before? Is it really going to generate more revenue for you or not? And then to the extent that you are touring, what are the shows that you want to live stream? You need to be very thoughtful about that ahead of time, because if the venue's not set up to live stream, there is, a whole set of stuff that goes into enabling that to happen, promotion and ticketing and all that kind of stuff is kind of outside of your live event. We do all that, on these platforms. So on Stageit, if you're working with us, we help you, manage all the ticketing for these events. We do a bunch of marketing and promotion and work to help you promote the event itself. So the sooner you get all that stuff set up and think that all through and give us enough time to really promote these events, that's really important. I think people think about this as the internet. Oh, we'll just go turn it on and, people will come. There's a lot of events happening online now. And it's important for you to reach your fans and to reach them with enough time for them to plan and buy tickets and plan their nights as well, much like they would a live event. So you've got to treat it in a similar fashion. We want at least 3 or 4 weeks ahead of the event to start promoting and pushing it. And then, be thoughtful about the content. A lot of artists will just do a show that they would do live. But the question is, do you have ways that you augment that live show with some additional things, whether it be, pre-show, sneak peek before you take the stage, after the show, meet and greets, whatever they are. There's a lot of things that you can do using the online platforms that you would never do in real life. You're not going to let the whole crowd backstage to come hang out with you, but you can do that online and not, feel uncomfortable about it. So there's a lot of things like that artists just need to think about.
And what's the role of promoters in this emerging world?
Yeah, but we're working more and more with promoters. Content programming will always have a role, right? And the more that promoters can be thoughtful about putting together great content, putting together these great experiences. We've done, I think the Dan Leibowitz show that we just did at the Chapel is a great example of this. The promoter, Folk Yeah, brought in an incredible light show. They created an ambiance for the show itself that made the live event experience in this kind of socially distanced pod-like, reality that we live in, made that special and made that great. But it translated so well into the live stream because they were so thoughtful about it. And we had time to work with them and kind of set it all up nicely. It was just beautiful, and when you can create these beautiful experiences, fans go crazy for it, and that was one where we did, 4 shows over 2 nights. After the first show, word was getting out like that was incredible, and more people came because the first show, had such a great reputation of being so good.
Yeah, cool. That makes sense. You were talking about promotion and lead time. Can you tell us about the partnership you launched with Spotify and how that relates to getting the word out?
Yeah, we're really excited to be integrated with Spotify. This is part of the Spotify for Artists program. And what they're doing is they're starting to promote virtual shows, much like they do live shows, and bring those listings into the artist profile on Spotify. So if you're a performer on Stageit and you have a artist profile on Spotify, your Stageit performances will now show up there in your artist profile and will allow your fans on Spotify to access those shows, and just amplifies the availability of these shows to the fan base. So it's part of a new program that we've launched at Stageit called Artist Amplified. Spotify integration is the first integration, and a huge one because they bring such a massive fan base to bear.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that's one of the things that's been tricky with the move to streaming on the recorded side is you're building up your fan base inside these platforms where you don't necessarily have direct relationships with the fans. So the more of that kind of content that can get pushed in there brings them back into the other side of the ecosystem, like the live side or the merch side and that kind of stuff. So that's definitely cool to see.
Yep, absolutely. And the more we can do that, the better, we think. And there's some really exciting things coming for us with the launch of the 2.0 version of the product, which is coming soon, which just brings a broader level of integration of all of those different tools that the artist has. Their merch store, their relationship with brands, the causes that they care about, all of those things need to be, seamlessly integrated into the fan experience. So it's not quite as disjointed as it is today, where you've got to go multiple places to kind of get all those things.
Yeah. Well, Stephen, this has been awesome. Before I let you go, as I said at the top of the interview, we kind of got to know each other through these music technology conferences and music industry conferences and so forth. You've been a great supporter of the Music Tectonics Conference, which we're doing again this October with some special stuff coming up, some exciting hybrid model that we're looking forward to talking about as well. But separate from live streaming, what are some music tech trends and companies that you're keeping an eye on? What else should our listeners find out from the world of Stephen White's kind of trend spotting?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very bullish on VR and AI. I think we're starting to see with some of the early shows, whether they be in Roblox or Fortnite or some of the stuff that companies like Wave are doing. I think it's a really, really interesting evolution of performance to give folks, again, this kind of new canvas of creativity where, it's not just the things that you can think of in the real world, it's things that anything you can think of that can be drawn, animated, and created in these virtual worlds. It allows for this kind of escapism into these other kind of virtual realities that are just incredible. And the gamification around it, I think, is also really interesting. People want to be engaged, they want things to do. Like our attention span has been so reduced because of our use of technology that, if you don't give folks something to do in the experience that they're attending, they're going to sit on their phone and do something anyway, because that's just the way we operate as human beings now. So I think the gamification piece and some of the things that Roblox is really an amazing platform. I think some of what they're doing with the metaverse is amazing, and just keep tabs on that as they continue to expand what they have going on in their platform. I'm also a big fan of virtual currencies. I think NFTs are, there's a little bit of a fad around this right now that I think is distracting to the reality of what this does, which is, really gives artists the ability to create something special for fans and to either sell them or give them, things that, are these equivalent of what we as kind of live music fans have had for years: ticket stubs, concert posters, remembrances of these experiences that stay with you. And the idea that now has, an attachment, a real attachment to the show, to the artist, that there's the ability to really, prove that it is, the actual thing from the actual time. Like it's the I was there. People have always loved that idea, and I think the ability to bring it into the digital world is just going to be, incredibly successful, and the use is much broader than just buying, a drawing or painting, virtual painting that someone put together.
Yeah, I love that. I feel similarly about the trend around it versus the larger pattern. Like what's exciting and hypey right now is not as much what I'm excited about so much as the larger pattern that you're talking about. And for me, the real pivot point will be when it feels like whatever that digital item is that you're purchasing or owing, or basically raising your hand and say, hey, this represents who I am. This is my musical identity. This is the experiences I have. If you've had shared experiences, you're like me, let's connect, once those things cross platforms, where it's not just watching a video on one platform or viewing a piece of art on one platform, but it literally has a cape in Minecraft, a t-shirt in Roblox, a weapon in Fortnite, that is all tied to one kind of digital item, that you almost like a subscription to an item that you can carry, because you don't buy a t-shirt at a concert and then only wear it in that stadium. You wear it to the store, you wear it to school, to work, whatever else.
Yeah, that's right.
Once the digital item gets beyond locked into these containers. And I think the crazy thing is it's because of the connection to the blockchain and the cryptocurrency that it could cross platforms.
Yeah, that's right. And the barriers have been the containers, as you call them, have been a necessity of the reality of where the technology was, right?
Yeah.
And so we're starting to get to the point where the interoperability, it doesn't necessarily work the same in each of those containers, and there's still a bunch of stuff to figure out in terms of how you take that thing that you bought into container A or container B and have it be something else. But the idea that you can start to do that, I think, is incredible. And it just feeds into this, the dawn of the creator culture here. I mean, we've seen it, with platforms like Patreon and OnlyFans and all these things, becoming just massive successes. What it speaks to is when you empower creators and you give them the ability to, use these blank canvases, they do amazing things. And so, we're getting to the point where the canvas can be anything, and can go anywhere. And that's pretty incredible, because it's been something that we in the music tech, the media tech world have been thinking about for, almost 30 years now. And it's been little kind of blips along the way that have gotten us closer and closer, but it feels like we're really kind of on the doorstep of a real evolution here that will just continue to empower creators and hopefully allow them to monetize their craft in a way that makes it sustainable, and they can, not have to have 3 jobs while also being creators, and fans have easy access to them and can patronize them in ways that that they want to, whether it be minimal or these huge kind of elephant fans that, would do anything for an artist.
Yeah.
I think it's exciting. It's exciting stuff.
Well, it's so fun to see you hop to the different roles you played in the industry, but topic to topic, because one minute you're talking about a folk musician who's had some success, and then we're talking about the real future potential of NFTs. And it's just great to have you back on the podcast. Great to have you as part of the Music Tectonics community. We'll have to get you back involved again this year as we start to roll out what we're doing. Thanks, Stephen. It's been great having you on the podcast again. And hopefully people will meet up with you at our next event.
Thanks, everybody. It's been a pleasure being here. Thanks, Dmitri, for having us.
All right. Thanks for listening to Music Tectonics. If you like what you hear, please hit subscribe on your favorite podcast app. We put out new episodes every week. Want more? Find it at musictectonics.com. You can dig deeper into this episode, learn about our annual conference, get the Music Tectonics app, and sign up for our newsletter. MusicTectonics.com has it all. Also, look for Music Tectonics on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Clubhouse. And connect with me, Dmitri Vietze, on LinkedIn. Peace.
You're listening to Music Tectonics.